Hello, my name is Debbie Reynolds. They call me the Data Diva. Today I want to talk about data privacy and Real ID. So, Real ID is a US government program that was enacted as a result of the Real ID Act of 2005. So, Real ID is the result of what happened in the US after September 11th 2001. At that point, the US government decided that they wanted to create situations where they had more information about people who flew on planes and also possibly entered federal buildings. So, this rollout of Real ID has been happening for 20 years. So, as of May 2025, it was the official date where all the states should have at that point gotten as many people as possible sign up for Real ID. And basically, what Real ID is a effort for the federal government to have a central database of people who are in the U.S. So this is kind of hard for people to comprehend. So I have a backup. So identity documentation of people in the US is generally managed by the states. So, as a result of that, and after 9/11, what the federal government found is that it was hard to be able to get identity information about people, especially in terror investigations, if they didn't have a central place. So, for example, they had to go state to state to figure out uh, identity information about these people who are flying on planes. So, what Real ID really is creating, for example, the documents that you give to get a Real ID are very similar to the ones that you get a regular state ID or a driver's license in your state. The difference is that the data that you provide for Real ID is going into a separate federal centralized database, right? And they may ask additional questions that your motor vehicle um, uh, branch in your state may not ask. So, for example, they may ask for additional documents like maybe a bill or something to provide additional information about you into those databases. So, or they may ask for additional documents that get scanned into this database because the federal government, basically the state for the most part, has those documents, but the federal government does not. So that was really the purpose behind Real ID, and it has again it's lagged behind, uh, especially as different states had to try to find the best ways to be able to implement it because it's even though it's a federal thing or the purpose is to create a federal database, every state had to figure out how to implement Real ID and to try to get people signed up for it. So, not all people will have Real IDs. Basically, they were saying after this May 2025 deadline, if people didn't have Real IDs, they could not fly. For now, people are still flying. They may get some additional screening, and that's I'm not sure what that end point or cutoff point will be. But not everyone in the U.S. has a Real ID. Not everyone in the U.S. will ever have a Real ID. Unless they change some of the requirements for that. But that's something down the road. But right now, as of this writing, I just researched approximately 60% of people in the US have a Real ID now. The states that are doing the best right now are Maryland, Georgia, and Florida. They've achieved almost over a 90% rate of Real IDs in those states. One of the states or a couple of states are kind of lagging behind. New Jersey is the worst right now at 17%, right? So this is going to be very interesting. I'm always of the mind that collecting more data isn't always the best way to go about it, but there is a deficiency in the fact that the federal government does not have a centralized identity system for people. And so I think, especially people from other countries, they probably don't understand that about the US, that because so much of the identity work happens on a state by state basis, the government doesn't really have those centralized records in a way that maybe other countries have. So that's it. Thank you.